Pranam, Jai Jinendra. As usual, we'll start with the prayers. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pava Panasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Utsayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pava Panasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. नमो रियंताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो वत्सायाणं नमो लोये सप्प साहुणं येसो पंचनमुक्खारो सब्ब पावपणासणो मंगलाणं च सब्बे सिंपडमं हवै मंगलम् वीर सर्वसुरासुरेन्द्र महितो वीरमुदा संश्रिता वीरेणाभिहत स्वकर्म निचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रोतमतुलं वीरशिखोरं तपो वीरे श्रीदूति कीर्तिकान्तिनिचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश कमठे धरणेन्द्रस्य सूचितं कर्म कुरुते भगुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीस्तु वः अंगूठे अमृतवसे लप्तितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. Welcome everybody. We had Pujya Suresh ji taking our class last week, and this week we will resume our narrative of Bhagwan Parshvanath's life from where we left off 2 weeks ago. Today we will just move the story forward from where we left it and just complete this one particular incident that we had started in the narrative of, and we'll end today's class there to give time for any questions that may have arisen from the story itself or from any other questions from last week's or from before that. I'm sure you all remember the previous lives of Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat. But I will, just as a reminder, as usual, share the slides that include the narrative on that. And then we will just move the story forward from where we left off last week about Bhagwan Parshvanath's life and his attainment of youth, and this sudden request for help in defending a nation comes via a messenger one day in the court of King Ashwasen. So let me just share my slides with you. You all remember this? Just give you a minute to just remind yourselves of the parallel lives of Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat. From life one as Marubhuti, that is Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul, and Kamat as Kamat, his elder brother, right up to the time when we started this particular part of Bhagwan Parshvanath's story with the description of the soul of Kamat being born again as a very poor person who ultimately ends up as becoming a tapas again with the name of Kamat. And we looked at the birth of Tirthankar Bhagwan Parshvanath and the celebration of that birth on Mount Meru. We understood some of what happens with every Tirthankar Paramatma's birth uh, at the time of birth, and how the Devs take the baby Tirthankar Paramatma onto Mount Meru and celebrate the birth. This is about Kamat. Just let you read it quickly. We've already discussed this. Bhagwan Parshvanath's birth. On the 10th day of Krishna Paks of the month of Posh, Poshvad Dasam. Now we started off this, just to recap. Bhagwan Parshvanath has become a very handsome, beautiful person, and the stories of his beauty and his virtues has spread all over the land. And a princess called Prabhavati uh, hears about Bhagwan Parshvanath from her friends and other people, and listening to all the tales of his virtues and his beauty, she falls in love with him, never having seen him, but just based on the narrative that she keeps on hearing about him. And where we started the story, King Ashwasen was sitting in the royal court, and a messenger comes in and introduces himself as the representative of King Prashnajit of the state of Kushasthal. Now he introduces himself as the representative of King Prashnajit, but he starts the narrative with describing the father of King Prashnajit, whose name was Narvarma, and he talks about how great a king Narvarma was, and uh, towards the later part of his life, he gives up his kingdom, hands over the throne to his son Prashnajit, and becomes a monk. And King Ashwasen is so overjoyed by this particular aspect of the message that he says, oh, that's just a great way for a king to behave. And he is very, he shares a lot of praise for that particular king. The messenger says further that King Prasnajit has a beautiful daughter whose name is Prabhavati. And as I just mentioned, she has heard about the beauty and the virtues of Prince Parshvanath and decides that she would only marry him. Her friends disclose this to her parents because they have been worried about Princess Prabhavati, because she is so engrossed in her thoughts about Prince Parshvanath that she has really madly fallen in love and starts losing weight and looking unwell, and they are worried. And her friends tell her parents as to what the reason for her current state is. King Prasnajit decides that by all counts, this would be the right person for her to wed, and he announces that he would send a messenger to Varanasi with a proposal for Prince Parshvanath, for Princess Prabhavati. A king called Yavan hears about this proposal, and he is somebody who's also heard about the beauty of Princess Prabhavati, and is a very powerful king, and he decides that with him being around, there is no way that anybody else can marry this princess. And he sends a messenger to um, King Prasnajit and says that with my presence, how dare you ask anybody else to be the husband of your daughter? That if I'm the only person who is fit for her or suitable for her as a husband, uh, and I will marry her. King Prasnajit sends a message back to King Yavan and says that that is not possible. I will have to reject your proposal because my daughter has decided to marry only Prince Parshvanath. King Yavan does not like this and says that I will take her by force, and sends a huge army that surrounds the state of Kushasthal. And King Prasnajit has no other option but to seek help from elsewhere, and he sends a messenger secretly to seek the help of King Ashwasen, Bhagwan Parshvanath's father. And this messenger on this day find himself in the court of King Ashwasen. As soon as he narrates the story so far, King Ashwasen gets ready immediately and says, how dare this king attack the kingdom of King Prasnajit? And we will definitely come to his aid, and I will lead the army myself. And as Prince Parshvanath hears about this, he says, you definitely don't need to go. I will be enough for this king, and let me go. The King Ashwasen, reluctantly agrees after a lot of insistence from Bhagwan Parshvanath to let him lead the army. As the army prepares for battle to set off to the city of Kushasthal, Indra is monitoring or watching what is happening on earth from Devlok, and he sees this scene unfolding, and he knows that Prince Parshvanath is extremely powerful and he doesn't really need anybody's help, but as a mark of his bhakti, his worship of Bhagwan Parshvanath, he sends a charioteer with a divine chariot to him with all kinds of weapons uh, for Bhagwan Parshvanath to lead the army that is going to the aid of King Prasnajit. We ended the story there, When Bhagwan Parshvanath's army reaches there, the Devs create a 7-story palace there on the battlefield for Bhagwan Parshvanath to stay, and all the armies are set up in formation against each other. And as was the custom in that time, Bhagwan Parshvanath sends a messenger and say, look, why don't you give up this insistence of fighting, and let's avoid a battle here that will only end in many people losing their lives. King Yavan receives this message, his armies receive this message, and they are all very proud of their strength and valor and would not accept that somebody is offering peace without fighting and is asking them to surrender. They are all getting very insulted by this offer of peace and surrender, and are determined that they would fight. A very wise minister, listening to this dialogue, warns them that you don't really know who this prince is. He's the most powerful person around, and he is the future Tirthankar. There is no point in fighting him, and we should accept his offer of peace and surrender. However, the leaders of his army are not very willing, but this minister goes over to the King Yavan and explains to him who Bhagwan Parshvanath is, who Prince Parshvanath is, and urges him to accept that, and describes what Bhagwan Parshvanath's army consists of, and the fact that he has divine help, he has the help of Devs, and that there is no way that even without the help of Devs, that he could actually win a battle with Prince Parshvanath. King Yavan finally agrees, and the description here is that he ties an axe around his neck as a mark of surrender and goes with folded hands in front of Prince Parshvanath and asks him for forgiveness and says, I'm sorry that I have brought this army to fight you. I am ready to surrender, and I am asking for your forgiveness. Bhagwan Parshvanath obviously accepts that and says, don't worry. The king King Yavan offers his kingdom to Bhagwan Parshvanath, says, I will be your servant, you take my kingdom. And Prince Parshvanath says, I'm not here to take anybody's kingdom. I'm just here to diffuse the situation and to avoid war. And please go back and accept and carry on as the king of your land. But please try not to do anything like this again. And the war ends before it starts. So basically, the battle is averted, and the Yavan king's army withdraws. Prince Parshvanath, along with his army, enters the state of Kushasthal and is welcomed by King Prasnajit, who is very thankful that a major crisis has been averted and that the siege on their land has been lifted now. He obviously wants to complete the formality of marrying his daughter Princess Prabhavati to him, and he brings her forward and tries to start the proceedings and says to Bhagwan, Prince Parshvanath, that I wanted to accept the hand of Princess Prabhavati. Prince Parshvanath says to him that I am only here on my father's word to protect you from this particular siege that you were suffering from, and I am not here to marry Princess Prabhavati. I am now, my work is finished and I'll be going back to Varanasi. And if you wanted, if you had a proposal, then you need to come back to Varanasi. And then Princess Prabhavati and King Prasnajit agreed to do that, and they go back to Varanasi, and this is what happens at the end. The King Prasnajit comes to the court of King Aswasen and asks him to accept the Princess Prabhavati as a suitable wife for his son, Prince Parshvanath. And then the wedding of Prince Parshvanath and Prabhavati happens. Then the story goes on as to Bhagwan Parshvanath and Princess Prabhavati carrying on with their normal life as a married couple. And following that, there is one major incident that is being described here. And this is where Bhagwan Parshvanath meets the Tapas Kamat for the first time. And we'll start off this part of the narrative, but complete it at our next class. Once when Prince Parshvanath, Bhagwan Parshvanath, is standing on the balcony of his palace with his wife Prabhavati, he was watching what's happening within the city of Varanasi from the balcony of his palace. And so a lot of people with bunches of flowers, baskets of flowers, hurrying outside the city gates. He calls some people who are rushing outside. What is the big celebration today that you're all rushing out of the city? And they're all very well dressed. And one of them says to them that there is no great celebration today, but outside the city, there is a tapasvi called Kamat, and he is performing a Panchangani tap. And we are all going there to worship him. and Prince Parshvanath, Bhagwan Parshvanath, along with the other people, decides to go out to see what is happening with this particular tapas called Kamat, who the whole city has become very conscious of and is rushing to worship him. What happens at that time, I think most of you know the story, but we will discuss it in detail next week. And I'll end the talk here now. But if there is, let's go on to any questions about this aspect and anything that else that you might want to ask. I know we are moving the story slowly, but we will probably try and finish this Bhagwan Parshvanath's life in a few weeks after Paryushan. And there are not a lot many incidents to describe after this, but we will discuss in depth some other aspects, but it won't take very long now. Okay? Anybody? The questions don't necessarily have to be about this particular topic, can be of anything that you're interested in.
I think Pratibha has got a question.
Yep, Pratik Bhai. You can put your video on if you like.
Pratibha, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, but you go ahead and then I'll ask, yeah?
બોલો પ્રતિભાબેન પ્રતિકભાઈની વાત કરી.
Thank you.
પ્રતિકભાઈ સોરી કોણ છે પ્રતિકભાઈ?
પ્રદીપભાઈ નથી, મીરાબેન મને અનમ્યુટ કર્યું. અચ્છા
અચ્છા ઓકે, મને થયું એમણે કહ્યું પ્રતિકભાઈ.
પ્રતિભાબેન.
ઓકે.
મને પૂછવું હતું કે એટલે પારસનાથ ભગવાનને ખબર હતી જ્યારે આ બધું બનતું હતું કે એ તીર્થંકર એમનો આ છેલ્લો અવતાર છે, તીર્થંકર થવાના છે? તો એટલે જે પ્રભાવતી સાથે એ લોકો તીર્થંકર, જે બધા તીર્થંકરો તો 3 સિવાય 24 માંથી 3 સિવાય બ્રહ્મચર્ય હતા, બીજા તીર્થંકર બધા પરણેલા હતા. સો એ મને થોડું સમજવું હતું કે કર્મનો ઉદય હોય એટલે એ લોકો આ પ્રભાવતી સાથે લગ્નનું જે એનું હોય ઋણાનું બંધુ એ પૂરું કરે.
હા, ભોગાવલી કર્મ બાકી હોય એટલે એ જે કર્મો એમણે ભેગા કરેલા હોય એ ભોગવ્યા વગર છૂટે નહીં, એટલે એ તો એમણે ભોગવવા જ પડે. અને એ દ્રષ્ટિથી એ લગ્ન કરે. અને એ જ રીતે છે આપણે જોઈએ તે શાંતિનાથ ભગવાન, કુંથુનાથ ભગવાન, અરનાથ ભગવાન એ ત્રણેય ચક્રવર્તી પણ હતા. અને ચક્રવર્તીની તો આટલી બધી પત્નીઓ હોય.
એ તો
એટલે એ જે ભોગ ભોગવાનો હોય એટલું જે પુણ્ય કર્મ એકઠું કરેલું હોય એ કર્મ પૂરું કરવા માટે એ ભોગ ભોગવ્યા વગર છૂટકો નથી. એટલે તો એ લગ્ન કરવા પડે. પણ એ જે કરે છે સમ્યક વિષેક શાયિક સમ્યક્તોના ધણી છે, એ બધું સમજે છે. એટલે તીર્થંકર પરમાત્માનો જીવ સંસારમાં રહેવા છતાંય એ સંસારથી વિરક્ત હોય.
સંસારથી વિરક્ત હોય, બરાબર. જે મહાવીર ભગવાનનું હતું એવું જ.
જે ચાલતું હોય એ એમાં શરીરથી બધેથી એ ભાગ લેતા હોય પણ એમાં ઇન્વોલ્વ ન હોય.
બરાબર. એટલે અભેદ રીએ. અચ્છા. બસ મને બીજું ક્લેરિફાઈ કરવું હતું કે આપણે જે સુરેશભાઈ આવ્યા હતા કોબાથી વાળા, એમનું જે પ્રવચન હતું કર્મનું રહસ્ય, તો હવે એ સુરેશભાઈ પાછા આવવાના છે આપણો કોઈ આમાં તમને ખ્યાલ છે કે સંદીપભાઈને ખબર છે?
એટલે એમના ઘણા બધા લેક્ચર્સ હતા ને કાંઈ મને શિબિર એવું કાંઈ હતું, પણ હવે આગળ શું પ્રોગ્રામ છે મને ચોક્કસ ખ્યાલ નથી. આપણા મંગળવારના ક્લાસમાં ભરતભાઈ આવે છે, પણ અત્યારે નથી મને લાગે છે આજે. ભરતભાઈ બધું ઓર્ગેનાઇઝ કરે છે, એટલે એમને ખ્યાલ હશે અને સંદીપભાઈને ખ્યાલ હશે, એમ શ્યોર.
ઓકે ઓકે.
મને ચોક્કસ ખ્યાલ
અને
નથી.
હા, એટલે ત્યારે તે દિવસ જે પ્રશ્ન રસીલાબેને પૂછ્યો હતો કે અને કહ્યું હતું કે એટલે દાદા ભગવાનમાં જુદું કહે છે ને આમાં કહે છે, તો ઓબ્વિયસલી સુરેશભાઈએ કીધું કે એ તો ક્રમિક માર્ગમાં જ જવું પડે, ક્રમ બાય ક્રમ. પણ અમને, હું પણ દાદા ભગવાનમાં છું, તો એમાં અભેદ દ્રષ્ટિ જ કે જે ભોગવવાનું હોય પણ તમે છૂટા રહીને તમારું કાર્ય પૂરું કરો. જેમ આ પારસનાથ ભગવાનનું તમે કહ્યું એ ભોગાવલી કર્મ હતું અને એમણે ભોગવ્યું જે બીજા બધા કર્મ હોય, એટલે એમાં એ પણ એટલે એ અક્રમ માર્ગ, એટલે એવી રીતે અક્રમ કહેવાય છે કે તમે છૂટા રહીને પછી છેલ્લે તો તમારે ક્રમિકમાં જ જવું પડશે. એવી રીતે અમને શીખવાડે છે કે અત્યારે આ અક્રમ આ કાળ પૂરતો જ છે.
એટલે સવાલ મારી સમજ પ્રમાણે રસીલાબેનનો એ દ્રષ્ટિથી હતો કે એમની સમજ એ પ્રમાણે હતી કે અક્રમ માર્ગ એટલે કે એકવાર સે સમ્યક્તોની પ્રાપ્તિ થાય અને પછી તમે ક્ષપક શ્રેણી ચડવા માટે જે એક પછી એક જે ક્રમ આવે, ગુણસ્થાના, એ ગુણસ્થાનક વગર કે એ ચડ્યા વગર જાણે એકદમ સડસડાટ માણસ સીધું મોક્ષ મળી જાય, એ જાતની વાત એમની સમજમાં
હું સમજી ગઈ.
હા, પણ સુરેશજીએ કહ્યું એમ કે એ જે આત્માના પ્રોગ્રેસના જે સ્ટેપ્સ છે, એ સ્ટેપ્સ તો ચડવા જ પડે અને એ સ્ટેપ્સ ક્રમ વાઇઝ છે, એટલે કે દે આર વન આફ્ટર ધી અધર. અને એમાં બે જુદી જુદી જાતના સોર્ટ ઓફ સીડી છે. એક ક્ષપક શ્રેણી કહે અને બીજી ક્ષાયોપસ્મિક ભાવથી કરતા હોય, એટલે કે એમાં ઉપર ચડે પણ અમુક લેવલ ઉપર જો ચેન્જ ન થાય તો ફરી પાછું નીચે પડવું પડે. એટલે એ જે 14 ગુણ સ્થાનની જે વાત છે, એમાં એ સ્ટેપ્સ તો ચાલતી હોય, પણ એ શું સમજાવતા હતા કે ક્યારેક એ પ્રોગ્રેસ એકદમ રેપિડ હોય, એટલે એ દ્રષ્ટિથી ક્યારેક વાત કરતા હોય કે આ અક્રમ છે, કારણ કે એકવાર સમ્યક્તની પ્રાપ્તિ પછી રેપિડલી મોક્ષમાં જવાની શક્યતા પણ છે. એટલે એક અંતર્મુહૂર્ત કાળની અંદર એ આત્મા મોક્ષમાં જઈ શકે, એવું બની પણ શકે.
બની શકે.
પણ મોટાભાગના લોકોને એ નથી બનતું અને વધારે સમય અર્ધ પૂતગલ પરાવર્તન કાળ જોઈએ.
અને કોઈ માટે રેપિડ હોય ને તો એનું આગલા ભાવનું ડેવલપમેન્ટ લઈને જ આવ્યા હોય, એટલે એવું પણ અમે એવી રીતે જાણીએ છીએ. અને એ કોઈનું રેપિડ થઈ શકે નહીં, બધું આ ગુંઠાણા પ્રમાણે જ ચડવું જ પડે. બસ, તો હવે આ ટોપિક બંધ કરીશ, બીજાને કોઈને પૂછવું હોય તો. પણ એટલે જસ્ટ ક્લિયર કરવા માટે કે અભેદ દ્રષ્ટિનું વધારે ભાર મૂકે છે.
ઓકે, થેન્ક યુ.
થેન્ક યુ.
બીજા કોઈને સવાલ? I'm sure you have some questions. Anything? Do I understand that? Do you find it easy to accept these ideas that are proposed in the narrative of Bhagwan Parshvanath? I'm sure for a lot of you, some of these descriptions are new. They may seem magical, they may seem different. in that context, if you were to explain this to your children, what kind of questions would they be asking? And do you have the answers for those kinds of questions? I always find, looking at things from that point of view, how do I explain this to somebody who does not have any background in Jain Dharma and finds this completely strange? Deepa, Sudhirbhai, no questions?
No questions in the chat, Ajitbhai.
What that tells me sometimes is either everybody has understood everything, or you have not understood, or you're not actually following what is being said. I presume it is the second one, or the first one, that everybody's understood everything. Am I right?
It looks like Pratibha Ben's got another question.
Okay. Thank you, Pratibha.
નહીં મારો બીજો ક્વેશ્ચન નથી પણ તમે જે પ્રશ્ન પૂછ્યો કે ચિલ્ડ્રનને કહેવાનું હોય તો હાઉ વિલ યુ એક્સપ્લેન બટ ઇટ અગેન ઇટ ડિપેન્ડ્સ ઓન ધ એજ રેન્જ ને આપણી સ્કૂલોમાં હોય તો આપણે કેટલી સિમ્પલ વાત કરીએ, મેચ્યોર યુથ જરા ટીનેજર હોય એની જુદી વાત કરીએ અને સાવ મેચ્યોર્ડ પર્સન હોય 20 વર્ષ ઉપર તો એને જુદી રીતે સમજાવીએ. એટલે ઇટ ઓલ ડિપેન્ડ્સ કે આપણે કઈ રીતે એને આપણે સમજાવી શકીએ. સો તમે કોઈ એજ રેન્જ આપો તો થોડુંક વધારે મને લાગે છે બધાને મગજમાં બેસે કે કેવી રીતે સમજાવવું.
You're right. I mean, what I'm thinking of is that if you got anybody past the age of 15, 16, adults, say.
16?
Yeah. And that would include anybody, I mean, even at our age. So people, the question is that a lot of the explanations and the narratives that we listen to that are described in our books, our sastras, if you do not have a background, then a lot of them may appear strange. How can this be? And the question arises, what are the fundamental principles that actually support this kind of unfolding of everybody's life? So the essential principles would be that the soul exists.
Then the karma, theory of karma.
The laws of karma would come in, and that we are all responsible for everything that happens to ourselves, and the effort that we make to better ourselves, to realize ourselves, is the most fruitful method. The dilemma comes for people when they find no parallel in their own experience between what we are talking about and how it relates to their own feelings, but also what they see and do on a daily, we all see and do on a daily basis. So our lives revolve around acquisitions, achievements, relationships. And in all this, our focus is on everything that is external to our core being. And we are so attached to the external that our constant belief is that that is who we are. So our identification with everything else is so complete that we actually don't detect ourselves as separate from all that is outside. So therefore, we use the word my family, my wealth, my house, my business, my profession, my name, and all these identities that we hold on to is our entire universe. And when we start talking about somebody having come from another life somewhere else and getting the good and bad in this life as a result of something that they've done in the past lives.
Yeah, pap and punya.
So making that connection and living with that connection paramount in your mind is where the challenge is. And we all hear about this in this kinds of classes and talks, but it is very difficult to actually hold on to that belief and to hold on to that understanding on a daily basis. Because everything that we do on a daily basis is about everything that is outside of us. So ultimately, our difficulty with connecting with all this boils down to our lack of introspection into who we are. And that is something that makes it very difficult to, first of all, make the first connection from a point of view of accepting this as a logical explanation about the nature of ourselves and the universe and our relationship with it. But that understanding and that acceptance is not enough because it doesn't actually go beyond that acceptance and understanding, and it doesn't go to the point of actually experiencing the separateness of the soul from the body and everything else around. And it is only when we begin to experience that separateness, that true nature of ourselves, that the first steps towards spiritual progress starts, because that is when we begin to see the beauty of ourselves as the soul and value that more than everything else that we have so far been valuing.
True, yeah.
So
introspection is very important to teach them or encourage them. They may know, I mean, આજકાલ છોકરાઓ તો books ને ઘણી વાંચતા હોય ને they might have come across, if they are lucky, on Jainism. So it is up to the parents or elderly to encourage them કે yes, આત્મા there is something called આત્મા, પરમાત્મા થઈ શકે ને બધું વાતો કરી શકે generally, yes. કે આપણો જ આત્મા પરમાત્મા થાય એટલે આપણે બીજા ભગવાનને ભલે અત્યારે માનીએ છીએ, મંદિરમાં જાય છે, પણ આપણો જ આત્મા is capable of becoming Bhagwan.
Yeah. I know, just from my understanding from the names, and I'm presuming, I think I know many, but on the list, and I know because of previous conversations with many of them, but I don't know everybody. So, for example, if I was to say, ask maybe Deepa, Sudhirbhai, Sheila Ben, if you were having this conversation with your son or daughter, what kind of direction would this take? And I know for a fact that if I was to have a conversation with my two sons, then always I would have to start with a different path with each one of them. I can't be talking about exactly the same thing with the two of them. If they are together, then my conversation would actually be geared towards the generalities that would be understood by both, but also would enable them both to move forward in the direction that they are moving into. And everybody has a different direction. So the conversations need to be different. But if I can ask, say, Sudhirbhai, Deepa, how would your conversations with your children go?
Hello, Ajit Masa.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I mean, I think I would find it difficult. I mean, that's one of the reasons, like this Sunday, I brought both Jamin and Nishma along to this, this Sunday when we came. But I think I would find it difficult.
Do you think that any questions that they might have were answered, or did they ask you any questions that subsequent to that event or anything else that they've listened to? Are there any questions in their mind that you find difficult to answer?
It
I
would be
think
nice if the video is open, so I mean, then it's good people know your questions and if they can see you, please.
Oh,
I
no,
don't know. For some reason, I can't get my video on.
don't
Okay,
worry.
that's
Just carry
fine.
on with it. Carry on with
Yeah,
it.
carry on, please.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I've been trying to explain to, say, for example, Jamin, that, when we say things like that, what we were saying, that like our family, we must have over many lives, we are probably all sort of kind of connected, things like that. I mean, I have tried to explain to them, but I don't think that they really understand that, a lot of the things which I've been learning about, and I have sort of had a conversation with them, and I mean,
You see that this is actually you brought out a very important aspect. Not everybody is interested in the narrative that you start about the nature of a person, the nature of the soul. So sometimes a conversation about sort of entering the realms of Adhyatma spirituality is way beyond the position that a person is in.
isn't true.
So, first of all, we need to understand where somebody's interests lie. And I don't know if most of you may have heard about the story of Wankchul, and it is actually quite a famous story that I've narrated in a lot of the classes before. But just very quickly, for the group who is here, who may not, some of you may not have heard this. And this is actually very important and interesting. And I'll try and we got enough time, so about 3 or 4 minutes, I will narrate this story. There are sort of for children as well, there is a kind of a comic book version of this as well. In short, Wangchul was once a prince who was very naughty, and there comes a point in his life when he is actually banished from the kingdom. And being a strong, very able person with lots of different skills, particularly of a warrior's nature, Wangchul gets connected with and comes into contact with a troop of dacoits or thieves. So in the past, they used to have a whole villages of thieves or dacoits who would live outside in the jungle, outside a city, and every once in a while make a trip and go and rob rich people and then come back and hide away in the villages. And they used to live their lives like that. So Wangchul becomes a leader of this, of one particular group of thieves like this. And once in that village, which is sited deeply within a forest, a group of monks comes along, and because the rainy season is about to start, Jain monks would normally stay in only one place for the 4 months while the monsoon season is on. So they come outside this village, and the time is such that they cannot travel any further. And the Guru Bhagwant, the leader, the Acharya Bhagwant of this particular group of monks, decides that they would settle down here for the next 4 months. And he goes to the leader of this village and asks him permission to stay in their village or outside their village, because they are entering somebody's space, and they would always ask for permission. And Wangchul, recognizing who these people are and their lifestyle in general, that they are ascetic and that they would normally talk with people about what is right and wrong, what are the good things to do and what are the bad things to avoid in life. And he's obviously, the whole village is a village of thieves. And Wangchul is worried that if any of my men or many of my men accept these teachings that these monks are likely to be proposing or likely to be teaching to people, then it may become difficult for us to actually sustain a living because we don't know anything else. So he says that he thinks in his mind that that will be the end of our future in some ways. So it's not just the men, but the whole families would find it very difficult. So he says, well, I don't mind you staying here, but only with one condition, that as long as you are within the boundaries of my land, you will not preach to anybody. And the Muni Bhagwant agrees and decides that there's no problem with that. And as long as we are within your boundaries, we will not preach to any of your men. But they live for 4 months outside the village, all their daily activities and their careful, the nature of their very careful life in protecting other living beings and being extremely peaceful is obviously visible to all the people in the village and to Wangchul. And at the end of 4 months, when the time has come to depart, the Acharya Bhagwant, they all set out to leave for another place, and Wangchul, having been the host for the group of monks, at least has the good manners and says, "You've been my guests, and I must come with you to leave you outside the village." So you accompany your guests to the door of your house. Similarly, he's accompanying his guests to the end of his village. As soon as Wangchul, he walks with the troop of monks, and as he goes out with them, when they reach the border of the village, the Guru Bhagwant, Acharya Bhagwant asks Wangchul, now that we are outside the village and I'm outside the border of your particular realm, can I talk to you about certain things? And Wangchul, being a polite person, even though he was a thief, he had the background of being somebody of a royal family. And he says, yeah, of course, you followed my instructions and my request, and you've not tried to preach to anybody. If you got something to tell me, I'm willing to listen. So outside their village, the borders of their village, the Muni Bhagwan says, I'm not going to preach anything more to you, but can I maybe ask you to take some very simple vows that I can see will be very beneficial to you? And Wangchul says, okay, tell me, what vows do you want me to take? And the Muni Bhagwan says, well, if you see any fruit that does not have a name, that you've never seen before, then don't eat a fruit whose name you do not know. Wangchul thinks, that's very simple. I normally don't eat anything that I don't know of anyway, so it should be easy enough for me to accept that vow. Okay, accepted. Then the monk says, the second vow that I'd like you to take is that I'm not asking you to give up. So you may have relationships with all kinds of women, but avoid having any relationship with a queen. Now, Wangchul says, well, of course, I'm never going to be in in contact with queens. And of course, even though he's married, uh, he's not going to, he wasn't a celibate and he wasn't faithful as such, but he says, okay, I will not have any relationship with the queen. And he says, a third vow was that if you are angry and you want to kill somebody and you raise your sword, if you raise your sword in anger and want to kill somebody, then walk back 7 steps before you strike. And Wangchul says, well, that should be easy as well to follow. And the fourth vow that he gives him and says, I know I'm not asking you to become vegetarian. I'm not asking you to avoid meat of any kind, except don't eat the meat of a crow. So Wangchul says, well, nobody ever eats the meat of a crow anyway, so that's not difficult for me. And he takes all these 4 vows. And the story then goes about how all these 4 vows completely transform his life, and each one of them, as circumstances unfold, have such a great benefit to his life that his life completely transforms. So the point of this story at this stage is that when we are talking to different people, recognizing who they are and where they are, and if you want to help them understand certain higher principles, then you start with the position where they are. And the only way to do that is to ourselves know what we are trying to teach in greater depth. So the ask is for us to actually become more learned. I can complete that rest of that story next time. So if you are happy, we can start off with that story, but we can end the class here today. For those of you who have heard this story before, my apologies, but hopefully the reminder might be of some help. Thank you. Chinagna Virudh Kai Bhulyoti, Sumanusan Gaya Giritasmichami Viktam. If I have said anything that is against the principles of Jain Dharma, then ask for forgiveness. Suramangala Mangalyam, Surakalyan Karanam, Pradhanam Suradharmanam, Janam Jeti Sasanam. Okay, thank you. Corretto.